Esther Ranson's interview at 8:10, and you can hear it on the Today podcast, which you can access on BBC Sounds. It's now 28 minutes to 8. Young people who tell their school they want to change their gender, to change the name they use, their pronoun and their uniform, may not have their request granted in future, as the government is issuing guidance which allows them to turn down those requests and urges them to involve parents. In a moment, we'll hear from two parents of trans children with rather different perspectives on the right way forward. First, though, let's hear from two young people who both identify as non-binary about what they wanted from their schools.
I think every kid just wants a safe space to figure out who they are. The privacy that school can offer you as a kid who's figuring out who you are in the world is really valuable. And it's not just, for LGBT kids, it's for all kids. They need that space where they can feel safe to explore and experiment with who they are in their presentation and how they socialize and how they want to be known. I think that would have been really harmful to me if a teacher could refuse my identity. And I think all it would do is mean you didn't have a relationship with that teacher.
At school, I felt like there was a part of myself that I needed to hide, and I was just kind of getting through the day. The lack of ability to identify parts of myself and experiment with my identity meant that I wasn't able to fully trust my surroundings and fully get to know myself.
This is such a difficult and a sensitive issue that often people involved don't want to be identified, not just those young people, but the parents that we're going to talk to too. Let's talk first to a parent we're calling Rachel, whose 16-year-old daughter socially transitioned at school without the family's knowledge. In other words, changed their name, changed the pronoun they used and so on. When I spoke to Rachel, I started by asking her what her daughter had asked for from the school and what followed from them.
She asked that she could be called by a different name and pronouns at school, and the school went along with it, apparently with no questions asked, but they didn't tell the family, didn't tell me, and they actively hid it from me for about 4 months, despite me being in touch with the school and expressing concerns about my daughter's well-being. They kept it hidden from me.
So you had worries, did you, about her behaviour?
I did, yes. I was very concerned about things that were going on and her dress and behaviour, and I reached out to the school and they told me to wait until she felt ready to talk to me. And I had several conversations with them over the course of a few months, and at no point did they tell me what was actually going on. They just told me to wait until she was ready to talk to me.
In effect, therefore, your daughter had two different identities, one at home and one at school.
Yes, she had said nothing to us at home. She had given no indication that she felt that way. After talking to the school, I was trying to give her opportunity to open up and talk to me, but it didn't happen. And the school just kept telling me to wait. They did say they were encouraging her to talk to me, but it just didn't happen, and they weren't honest at all in what they knew.
What are you hoping for from the guidance that comes out today? What might have helped you if it had been in existence at the time your daughter and you were going through all this?
I want the schools to make sure that parents are included in whatever is going on with their children. At the end of the day, she's still a child. I have parental responsibility. It's up to me to care for her well-being, physical and mental. And I have to say I'm completely horrified that the school did this and kept me in the dark.
Have they explained why they kept you in the dark?
When we did find out and challenge them, they claimed that their lawyers had implied that they could be sued by my 16-year-old daughter.
Sued?
Yes. They said that, yes. I find it completely ridiculous, but that was the excuse they gave.
And what do you say to those who say that at 16, she could take a whole series of decisions without your consent, and therefore she should be able to determine her own identity?
I would say that at 16, children are still considered children, aren't allowed to marry, drive, buy guns, buy glue, drink alcohol. And I think, this is something that should only be done, in the full knowledge and understanding of what this may lead to.
Finally, how is she living now? Under what identity?
Well, we've never gone along with any change in identity or pronouns. She's reverted back to her name and pronouns at school. Her mental health and her performance at school completely went downhill at the point she was being known as another name and pronoun at schools. Now she's settled back down and she's performing much better at school. She seems happier in herself at home. And I just think it was all a big mistake on how the school handled this.
Thank you very much indeed for sharing your experiences.
Okay, thank you.
That then the experience of a parent who was not told by a school. Let's turn now to someone we're calling Mike, who has a transgender son. Who did, Mike, know that your son wanted to change gender, as the school were told at the same time? So, good morning to you. What was your experience?
Well, our experience was very different. Our son came out to us when he was 12. He told us first in June of 2020, and then when he returned to school after lockdown, we informed the school on his behalf. And
did they make changes?
They certainly changed his name and his pronouns. In terms of other changes, in terms of things like toilets and changing facilities, etc., no changes were made in any real sense. He was told he could use disabled toilets, but he didn't like to use disabled toilets because I'm disabled, and he knew that I get rather irritated when able-bodied people use disabled toilets, so he didn't go to the toilet at school.
And you think they should have made changes, do you? Because the guidance looks set to say that schools should retain single-sex facilities, even if they make alternative facilities as well.
But it's not a big change. I mean, all it means is just putting a gender-neutral sign next to a disabled toilet.
Oh, so the same toilet, but labelling it differently.
That's right, yes, so that the impression isn't given that these young people are actually using a disabled toilet.
I understand. Now, you were told by your son, we just heard from a parent who wasn't. Do you accept that most parents would want to know, would want to be involved, and that it's perfectly reasonable for guidance to be given to teachers to tell them, look, involve the parents?
I think a great deal depends on the individual. I think in a case where a young person is happy to actually come out to their parents, it says a great deal about the relationship with the parent and perhaps how they expect a parent to respond. If they're in a household where they won't be accepted, where it's going to cause a lot of stress within the family, where it could lead to all sorts of issues, extending even perhaps as far as abuse of the child, then there should be no pressure for that child to have to come out if they feel that they're not safe at home.
But how can a teacher who spends a few hours a week with a child know more about what's happening in their home than the parent does?
I think it puts a massive amount of undue pressure onto teachers. In all honesty, I think when a child is expressing some confusion about their gender identity or their sexuality, there should be some support services in place to which a school can signpost a young person, where they'll get proper professional counselling, not biased in one direction or another, but simply to enable them to work through their own thoughts in their own head and come to their own conclusions about identity.
It's been useful to hear your experience, also the experience we heard before of the young people, other parents. We had a teacher earlier in the programme. During the day, we will hear the detail of what actually is in the guidance, and no doubt that'll be examined by other outlets here on Radio 4.